Voice. Okay, so we're really happy today to have Douglas Atkin coming as a former global head of community from Airbnb to participate in StartUp MasterClass. So the point of having this program is to educate our employees from people who have world-class talent and ideas, but also to share these ideas throughout Indonesia and Southeast Asia to universities who are students who might be inspired and delighted to receive this information. So really quickly, I've brought a few people on our HR teams and our community management teams and just throughout the entire company to sit and listen and absorb wisdom today. So we've got Kiki from HR. Shinthia is also on our hospitality and operations team. Ara is doing HR. Singh is an intern joining us from Singapore. Rafik's one of our community managers. Tendi also works on community. And Andre also works on our community management as well. So that's the team that we have today. And this is Mr. Great. Douglas Atkin. Douglas, I'll let you introduce yourself and maybe give us a little short bio about like your work and your expertise.
Oh wow! Well, because I'm quite old. I'm old, so there's a lot of stuff. I started off in branding and advertising in London and New York, and then while I was in New York, I became very interested in why people become committed to things. Because one day this was like sort of 1998, 99. Some clients came in from a famous brand to our agency. And they were very depressed because they said, loyalty is dead, branding is dead, because all products are more or less the same now. You know, anything you'd have different can be replicated very fast. And so basically we're going to be out of a job. And so as it happened that night, I happened to go to a focus group of teenagers talking about their favorite brand of sneaker, which happened to be Converse, but could have been any. And they were talking in almost religious terms, evangelical terms even, about why they love the sneaker. And at the end of the day, functionally, that sneaker was no different from any other. Just as the marketers were saying, they were the same. They were functionally the same. But you couldn't tell that to those kids. These kids believed they were the best, and certainly right for them. And so that's when I decided to try and understand why people and how people become committed to things. I mean, I started off thinking, I'm going to sort of analyze cult brands, famous cult brands at the time, like Harley Davidson and Apple. And then I thought, well, why stop there? Why not figure out how cults themselves, full-on religious cults, political cults, whatever, how they create attachment and commitment? Because if we can decode that, then maybe we can apply those lessons from the most extreme form of belonging, which is cults, to the less extreme form of belonging, which is community of brands, maybe. So I did lots and lots of research over the years, and that eventually became a book called The Culting of Brands, which was published by Penguin in 2004, so a long time ago. This was before social networks, so there was no Flickr, no Twitter, no Facebook, nothing. And so I was a bit of a lone wolf in the wilderness, saying the next big thing in business is going to be community, because it creates amazing commitment and word of mouth. Mm-hmm. And people basically kind of got it, but it wasn't until the social networks launched and they saw people's behavior, you know, doing all the things I was talking about, basically, that they became, you know, really into it. And lucky for me, some of the founders of those social networks read my book, and I only know this because they told me afterwards, which made the whole thing worthwhile, really. Especially the founders of Flickr, Katerina Fake and Stuart Butterfield. They showed me their book, and they said, we actually used this, and we're not kidding, to build Flickr, it made the whole damn thing worthwhile. Writing a book's really, really hard. So,
okay.
Yeah.
Stuart Butterfield from Slack, the founder of Slack.
Yes, he originally founded Flickr. I think it's the same guy. Okay. He was married to Katerina Fake, and then they split.
Okay, got it. Wow.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So that book, basically, they Flickr people, Stuart Butterfield and Katerina Fake, sent it to a friend of theirs called Scott Heiferman, who started one of the very first social networks in 2001. He started Meetup.com. Which is a great social network, because you meet online to find people who share your passions and interests, and then you meet offline, face to face.
Definitely.
So that was great. And I ended up, I was going to be a consultant, and then we got on so well that he invited me to be partner with him, basically. There were 4 of us running Meetup at the time. This is 2000, when was this? 2008.
Okay.
7. No, it was 2006, 7. So I did that, and it was great because going from cults, you know, which are extreme forms of belonging, to Meetup, which is ordinary, everyday belonging. You know, people who are passionate about pugs or want to learn about startup, how to do a startup or whatever. It's ordinary people with ordinary needs being satisfied by ordinary, everyday communities. So that was really, really good. Then while I was there, I became very interested in how movements start. Social movements like the civil rights movement, the gay rights movement, the women's rights movements, because I thought I might use those techniques to help promote a movement around meeting up face to face, sort of anti-technology, pro-live meeting. And so I did a lot of research to find out, like I did with cults, how they worked. And while I was doing that, someone joined Airbnb called Jeremy Hymans, and he and I not Airbnb, Meetup. He and I left Meetup and started a company called Purpose, which is all about how you mobilize millions to take the same action at the same time against a single leverageable point. Could be a politician, could be a parliament, could be a CEO, to get them to take action to make the world a better place, basically. So we did that, and we advised nonprofits mostly on how to create mass movements, but we also started our own, one of them which is called All Out, which has been the world's largest gay rights movement for years now. I mean, we were the people who stopped the Kill the Gays bill in Uganda twice, and led marriage equality in France, and created the whole narrative, homophobia narrative around the Sochi Olympics in Russia, all those kinds of things. Wow. So we've done like 30, 40 campaigns like that, and they've been fantastic. Yeah. Okay. And then I did another startup, I left that, did another startup, and then I got to Airbnb. And Airbnb, I got in there in a weird way. You were there when I joined, right, King?
I did. I was there in 2013. I met you at the one Airbnb, and you were giving a talk about a brand. And I remember you had a huge audience. Like normally people had 30 people. I think you had around 300 people listen to your talk.
Right. Well, yeah, was that one on Airbnb? God. Yeah. Anyway, yeah, so I got in there because I think Joe Gebbia, who's one of the founders, read my book, and also some articles I've written about community. And
wow, okay.
Yeah, and then I came and did a fireside chat in September of 2012. Then I came back and did some work, which ended up becoming the work that created the purpose of Airbnb, which is to create a world where anyone can belong anywhere. Okay. And then in the middle of that work, Brian offered me a full-time role, and I joined in January 2013 as global head of community. And then, in HQ, as you probably remember, there were only about 180 people in San Francisco.
That was
now there's about 5. That was about 5,000. Yeah, Rhode Island Street. Yeah, exactly. Right. And on a floor and a half that we shared with others. And so it was. You might, as you will know this, when you join a company like that at that size, you're doing all kinds of stuff that's beyond your so-called job description. You're just, putting out fires, running around basically your adrenaline. You must know this because you're in a startup yourselves, I guess. Your adrenaline gland is opened all the time.
That's a good way to put it.
But there were several things that I did when I was there, which might be interesting. One is I hired Obama's grassroots organizing team from his 2008-2012 campaigns.
Was that
because
Jason Katz Brown, or I heard some of those guys that were engineers were also involved in that. Who was that? The person you hired from Obama?
Well, a lot in the end. I started off with a guy called John Baldo. Okay. And then I hired some consultancies of people who started the consultancies after they worked for the campaign. And then I started hiring them in-house. Okay. Johnny Styron, who's still there, was running 12 grassroots organizers out of San Francisco. Anyway, the reason why I did that is because grassroots organizing is a brilliant way of creating a community of people who do things, who make change. And it's the best way of scaling community. So I had inherited some community managers around the world who were all great. But Airbnb was growing so fast that they couldn't scale. They could only have a capacity of about 100, 120 people, hosts and guests that they could interact with.
Right.
But there were tens of thousands in some of the cities. Like in New York at the time, there was 15,000 hosts, and they couldn't scale. So I was looking for a methodology that did. And the second thing that happened was that it started really with the Attorney General of New York subpoenaed Airbnb in 2013 to get all of the hosts' information, because he wanted to find an excuse for prosecuting Airbnb and maybe even shutting it down. And at the time, New York was by far our largest market. And we were a little pipsqueak company no one had really heard of, and all the hotel chains had huge amounts of money power and people and sort of reputational power. And they're beginning to see Airbnb as a threat, and they basically wanted to close us down. So all around the world this is emerging, but it kind of started in New York. And so anyway, the New York guy wanted to close us down. Now, the Attorney General of New York, when he issues a subpoena, you jump. There's no one ever says no to the Attorney General of New York. And we had long, sweaty sessions with Brian, late into the night, trying to decide what to do, because this was a existential moment.
Right.
This was basically, he could have closed down our operation in New York, which would have closed down about 30 to 40% of our business, which would have really hurt. Would have been a massive, big piece of damage. But so we said no to the Attorney General of New York, and they were aghast. Yeah, and they have loads of lawyers. Obviously, he's a prosecutor basically, and they asked us, "Do you have lawyers?" You know that no one ever says no to the Attorney General of New York. And he just got billions out of the global banks the previous week for causing the 2008 Great Recession.
Right.
So they were like astonished, and we said, no, we're going to take you to court. We're going to squash the subpoena because we think this is a massive data overreach, and we're not going to give confidential information up to you for no particular reason about our hosts. So no. And that decision, we only came to that decision really because for two reasons. One, it was the right thing to do for our hosts. We were living our values, which was being a host. We were hosting our hosts. Secondly, I was making the argument that if we don't stand by our hosts, we'll lose them forever. Because at that point, they were really scared. This was a witch hunt, the way they saw it.
Right.
A few months previously, a host had been fined, which would be again overturned in court for some reason. It was trumped up. And so they think, oh my God, they're going to have our information. They're going to fine us. I mean, they're really scared. So when people have fear, that's a dangerous situation. So unless we were right alongside them, and in fact, what I said, the hotels have money power and lobbying power. What they don't have is people power. We have people power. We have hosts and guests who love us. So what if we mobilize them to take political action with their own representatives to change the law and make New York State receptive to this new kind of economy? So that's what we did. And over the next 6 months, which was exhausting, we ran this amazing grassroots campaign, which turned everything around, turned the media in our favor, put the Attorney General on his back foot. We took him to court. He lost. We won. It was a good story. So anyway, that was one of the, as far as community is concerned, that was sort of interesting because no company had ever used grassroots organizing before. Probably still haven't. And I learned a good thing, which is it's community management that scales, which you need to do as you grow.
That's the topic I wanted to approach you, because the way I see your community management for a very long time is I remember reading about it as a role when I applied for a job at Airbnb, because it sounds so vague. It sounds something that was almost like in its infancy back in the 2010s. And I think through your progress and networking across different professional zones in government, in politics, and also in tech, you've kind of have discovered the power behind it. And I've read your blogs, actually. To be truthful, I read
Oh,
that
okay.
yesterday, and I was okay. This is how I began yesterday, actually, Douglas. So I went through and I looked at all the hard questions that we had ever faced, and then as I was reading your blog, I realized that you answered a lot within the realm of community management. Then I started thinking,
Oh, okay.
since I have this opportunity to speak to you, maybe I'll ask you questions about like company level, like core value. And then I realized you
Right.
answered a lot of questions about that too, and you gave clear examples about it. So then,
In Medium, yeah, in Medium.
in Medium, yeah, and then I really like what I'm bringing today is sort of like specific questions that are just on those like sort of chicken and egg boundary points of where things are. So I would like to begin by actually this question, which is um, when you okay, wait, let me skip over that one. I think you answered that one already. You talk about this idea of purpose a lot and about being really committed to the purpose and accepting no compromise to the purpose. And I remember you wrote that bit about like Peter Thiel tells Brian, "Don't fuck with the culture," and you wrote the email saying
Yeah.
the culture is fucked, and you explained
Yes.
exactly why and showed the survey. But I've also noticed that like what brought us to that point in the first place, right? Why did we get to a point where the culture was fucked? I mean, we're not consciously making bad decisions to degrade our culture.
No.
So then what I've seen is that it feels like to me as let's say when we make decisions, there's deposits and then there's withdrawals that we make in our culture. So let's say
Yep.
we hire somebody because we need somebody today. So they're not a perfect fit, but if we don't get somebody today, then
Yep.
we don't get the project done. Or we onboard a
Right.
partner, they're not a perfect fit, but we need them because of prestige or value to what we can do.
Yeah.
So my question is, at what point do you know if the tipping has gone the other way, or do you just remain strict and absolutely commit to your values and you make no compromises, but then you sort of accumulate other, let's say, maybe lost opportunities, or what do you pay for your culture, I guess, is what I'm asking. What are the acceptable sort of compromises? Yeah.
Well, I don't think there are any acceptable compromises ever, because and that's something that I really pushed Brian and Joe and Nate about a lot, because they didn't compromise about culture either. They, in terms of hiring someone, for example, their very first hire, first non-founder hire, they needed an engineer, because Nate was the only engineer. Nate, Joe, and Brian are the three founders of Airbnb, and Nate was the developer. So they needed this developer instantly, just as you might expect, a three-person company that's growing quickly. But Brian said, we waited 6 months. We interviewed about 100 people, and many of them were fantastic developers, but we knew that they wouldn't fit in with us. This is a startup. Whoever you're hiring in a startup is disproportionately influential on the culture, obviously, because it's a small company, small group of people. That means an individual's impact will be quite significant. So this was one person making a total of 4. And you can imagine, there were desperate needs over that 6 months to hire an engineer, but they didn't do it until they found the right proper fit. A guy called Ralph, I think it was. And so they didn't compromise. And the way Brian describes it is that it's, in a sense, it seems like you're missing business opportunities, but what you're doing is you're actually investing long-term in the culture, which gives you stronger organization for better returns longer term. It's all about the long term. I talk about that. They call it Plan B, which I'd never heard them talk about until we had this session one Sunday afternoon in 2015, I think it was, to talk about core values. And they kept talking about, we did Plan B, and I said, what's Plan B? And they said, Plan A is the easy thing to do, is the thing that most people do. When you're in a crisis and there's an amazing need, all you want to do is reach for something off the shelf and use it because you're in a panic. It's scary. And every time, and that happened a lot. So it happens always in startups. So, but they always said, no, we did Plan B instead. Plan B is always harder because no one's ever done it before. It's not an easy solution. The reason why no one's ever done it before is because you're unique. You have a clear purpose, differentiating purpose and values. No one's like you, and you're going to do the right thing that suits you and only you as a company. So I mean, as Nate said it, we forged our own path. They kept using that phrase. We forged our own path. A classic example you might have seen in the Medium articles is pretty early on, Wimdu was launched in Europe by the Samware brothers. And the Samware brothers' modus operandi is that they build rip-off sites, copycat sites. So they did that for Groupon, they did it for eBay, and then they only build them. The only purpose of building them is so the original will buy them. That's their modus operandi. And so they built Wimdu, which was basically a rip-off Airbnb, European Airbnb. And the three founders came over, met people in the company, and then said, no, we're not going to buy them, which is a huge deal, because if they would have had an established network of customers, of hosts and guests and employees in every country in Europe already set up. It was a turnkey operation. Instead, by saying no, they had to build their own from scratch, whilst in competition with the organization they didn't buy. Right? So it's double pressure. You're not only having to build your own network, you're having to do it whilst Wimdu is trying to defeat you. So that's tough, but that was a plan B decision. They said plan A was unacceptable. They would have screwed our culture. It was toxic, and it's not us. So we have to forge our own path, and we have to create our own. And they did this. They pulled off this amazing job in about 6 months to a year. You know, they hired people. I don't know if you remember, like Jenna Meister and Elizabeth Muller and all those people. Very, very quick. And Lisa Dubost.
Yes.
All those people very, very quickly to set up this European network, which they did in rapid speed, and they did it their way. And then within a year, Europe was a bigger business than the US. It's about 2013, 14. Yeah. So in the end, it worked out really, really well. So my point is, the Airbnb founders didn't compromise because they didn't think it was compromising business. They just said because we'll get more than we would have done in the short term, but in the long term. And we've done it our way. The other reason for doing it, by the way, also is, and I've seen this so many times, like in previous companies, when I worked in branding and advertising in consultancies and agencies, we'd hire someone because they had a client connection, or they were particularly good at one thing, but everyone hated them because they were toxic, nasty people. And then there would be this big debate amongst management. We can't fire this person because this client is attached. And if we fire him or her, then the client will leave. So plan B would be fire them. Or in fact, don't hire them in the first place.
Got it. So it's this question that actually brings us to a lot of, when I looked at a lot of the questions that our team had, I actually looked and I examined, are we actually projecting our purpose out constantly to our community? And so let's say this, right? Because this part I'm very curious about. Before you joined Airbnb, they had some purpose that maybe wasn't belong anywhere, but it was some purpose, right? And maybe people were just...
Well, it wasn't articulated really well. That's the thing. And I mean, there were lots of purposes knocking around, just like there are in most startups when they start. But that's okay, because you don't really know, you haven't quite figured out yet even what business you're in often. And then that takes a while. And then the cumulative interactions and values of the people in the company who are in a startup will lead to what the purpose really is. So, when I was doing that work in 2012 with Brian and Joe and Nate, on purpose, I said, I need to talk to you about what you think the purpose is, because they even had as a core value in champion the mission. And I would say, well, okay, what is it? And then they would flounder around and say, what exactly are people championing here? Because I haven't heard a clear articulation of it. Anyway, so, but there were things like, they would say, well, we have this great ad campaign, this great marketing campaign called, what was it? Travel Like a Human, which was near it, but I hadn't nailed it, and a couple of other ideas. And being visionary leaders, they had lots of ideas. What I was said was going to do is I'm going to talk to you guys, but then I'm going to go out with this small team and talk to our host and guests and employees, because the danger of only talking to CEOs, people like you, is that they can indulge in wishful thinking and want to be this amazing, brilliant idea, but it isn't necessarily rooted in reality. So if you've read the Medium stuff, you'll know that one of the first important ingredients of a strong purpose is that it's grounded in a universally experienced truth. And that way, it makes sure that you don't overreach. That people will see it and go, yeah, that makes sense. I understand. That's true. I've experienced that myself. Not necessarily every time, but when it's been at its best, it's been that. So we spoke to 485 people around the world at the time. You may have been one of them. And then it took a long time to figure it out after I was there for 6 months. But then I came back and said, basically what people are saying is they want to belong everywhere, is what I said at the beginning, and then it became anywhere. And that's exactly what hosts want to do for guests. Guests don't want to be tourists. They want to feel like local. They want to feel like they belong to the culture of that city. They don't want to just take photographs and sit on the top of a big red bus. They want to engage with the culture and truly understand and walk in the shoes of local people. And that's exactly what hosts want to do. Especially in Asia, we found out later, actually, is that the hosts there really wanted to include you as part of the family. And that's where creating a world where anyone can belong anywhere came.
Got it.
So I've forgotten what the question was you asked, actually. Maybe you didn't even ask one, I forget. I was just warbling on.
I think we got to it. The idea was how do you, what the purpose was before and how you articulated it and got it to focus in. And have you noticed that, essentially once it's been articulated, does it just spread out a lot easier? You have less friction coefficient as you're going from person to person, the story kind of propagates, or is that?
It's a good question. It's a really, really good question, because by the time, it was eventually launched. So this is what happened, basically. We did all that research. I came back in at the end of 2012 at the last, maybe that's where you were. It's like the first one, Airbnb, was it in December of 2012,
right.
And in Rhode Island Street. So, and then it's when I, said, this is what we found. But I said, we don't know what the answer is yet, because, I've got basically strategic constipation. There's so much information coming in, and nothing's coming out. So it's all just got stuck. And then in the meantime, I started working for Airbnb. And then I went to Brian with a proposal, which was to start a movement for the sharing economy, a member-led movement. And so he and I, as he called it, basically did a startup within a startup in the first half of 2013, and launched this thing called Peers. I used my old company purpose to help us formulate this thing. So I was totally distracted and busy. And then in June, I think it was, of 2013, he said, hey, what about the purpose? You told me 6 months ago that it was the most important thing we should need to figure out. What is it? And said, well, give me a second. I'll go back and look at the data and have a think about it. And that's when I came back and actually said it in an email. All I did was sent an email to him and Joe and Amy, who was the marketing director at the time, Amy Curtis McIntyre, and said, it's this. It's creating a world where anyone can belong anywhere or everywhere. And then, so the sequence of events is this. And by the way, Brian and Joe basically went, yeah, that sounds exactly right. Then they had an offsite of the E-Staff, which I missed because I was sick. E-Staff was the management leadership team.
Right.
Whether it's specifically to do the very thing that I told them we shouldn't do, which is have some bloody consultant come in with the leadership in some offsite, and they can pull things out of their asses and hope they're true. And so they did that with the E-Staff, which I missed, but I'd already said it's belong anywhere. And then Brian said, yeah, it's belong anywhere. And once you have the founders of the company saying that's pretty helpful and influential. Then the next thing that happened was that they wanted to change their logo, which was that weird Airbnb spelled out in lowercase.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and they didn't want a logo, they wanted a symbol. And a symbol is basically a graphic design with meaning attached.
Yes.
There are many religious symbols, obviously. You know, there's the crescent moon and the star. There's the dove of peace. There's the communist star. Whatever. These are all logos, if you like, but we have intense cultural meaning attached. And the company, the design store, I think it was called, was struggling in coming up with something that was right. And Brian went in and slapped "Belong Anywhere" up on the wall and said, "This is the meaning. Make it about this." And then that, within a few days, they were embedded in by that time we'd moved actually to 888 Brannan. And they came back with the Bélo,
right,
or as I call it, the equal opportunity genitalia logo. Because there is something in there for everyone.
That's the reaction.
I mean, really, everyone. Every single one. Well, at the time, so that was launched in 2014, I think it was, in July, when Mildenhall had joined, the marketing director.
That's right.
And he picked "Belong Anywhere" was never meant to be a tagline. It was an internal purpose that we used to inform things. He said it's a great tagline, so they launched "Belong Anywhere" with a great advertising campaign called Mankind. And prior to that, though, 3 months before, we launched it, we tested it actually. We had the logo, and Brian, Joe, and I, and Andrew Shapiro, who was the head of graphic design, went to New York and showed it to, and the meaning, the idea of "Belong Anywhere," to hosts and guests in a loft in New York. And the response was amazing. I mean, some of them even had tears in their eyes. Grown men had tears in their eyes saying, "That's exactly what it is that I'm doing. I kind of knew that. You said it exactly right. That's exactly what I'm trying to do, is make people feel like they belong here in my home and in my neighborhood." And that's exactly, and the host and the guest said the same thing. That's exactly what I want. So, and it gave them sort of chills down the back of down the back. We were like, and it's like, it's reaching for the stars. We want to create a world where barriers are dropped. You know, barriers of race, of gender, of culture, of language, everything is dropped, and people are meeting across the kitchen table and getting to know each other and feeling like they belong. So it was a powerful, big idea, really. So once that happened, we came back, and then we did a big presentation of it. I did, and the founders did, and Mildenhall did, and saying, this is the idea, this is the purpose, this is the new logo, the idea behind the logo. It's going to become a symbol, and this is the advertising campaign that we're going to launch it with. And so that was all pretty seamless. It was, I mean, and then I guess there was about, I don't know, 1,000 people at Airbnb, maybe 1,200. So it still wasn't huge. It wasn't that hard to disseminate it. And the other thing is that, you know, because it was based in a universally experienced truth, people recognized it, just like those hosts and guests did in New York. Employees did too, and said, "Yeah, that's it. That's what we want to do." I buy into that wholeheartedly. Being able
to crystallize that thought is in essence, it's an insight, right? It's actually being able to sort of distill down what everybody's experiencing and sort of activate it.
It's an insight plus. Because there's other criteria you should have. So it needs to be based on an experienced truth. So you need to go out and talk to people, find out what the experiences are. But you can't just leave it there. There's another ingredient, which is, as I say, it needs to reach for the stars. It needs to seem impossible, but just actually be improbable, because people need to be, because ultimately purpose-led companies need to make a positive impact on the world. They need to make a difference. And so people tend to want nowadays, which is great, organizations that want to make a difference. So, so it needs to be exciting. It needs to be, you need to create a picture of the world as it should be rather than the way it is now.
Got it.
Basically. So there's that. That's those two ingredients: universally experienced truth and reach for the stars. The third one is it should be about just one, but a very big idea. If you have like 5 different things in your purpose, people are never going to remember them, and they often are conflicting. Right. So there just needs to be one singular idea, but you should make it a very big idea, because you never want to run out of ways of executing it
Got it. Got it.
over the next 100 years, right? So it needs to be, so belonging anywhere is a huge idea. You're never really going to finish doing that.
That's
You're gonna keep going.
okay.
And then the final criteria is that it should be memorable, like a tagline, but not necessarily a tagline.
Mhm.
And the reason why it should be memorable is very practical, which is that everyone in the organization, including customers, should know it and remember it and internalize it. So again, if you have a purpose that takes a paragraph, that's no good. It needs to be something that's in a line, even just a few words. Otherwise, people are never going to remember. And everyone in the organization, right, from the receptionist to the delivery guy to the CEO to the investors to the everyone needs to know what the purpose is.
Excellent.
And memorize.
Very good. Very good. I've got another. Thank you for that brilliant story. You took us through the narrative of the challenge, and it's exciting sailing through these waters at the time that all these important decisions are happening. And I've got a question about core values, which is I read your blog again, and I remember you talked about the core values and even the process of how to refine the core values and simplify the core values. Have you ever seen a case? Yeah. Okay, so it used to be like 6. I think you guys reduced down to 4, and it was looking at overlapping Venn diagrams. Yeah. People said. I have a question, and this is related to our experience here at Bukit Vista. And one of the by the way, our purpose is pretty simple. It's inspire delight everywhere, every time, everyone. So hopefully that kind of great. Gets in the right frame. But we had this challenge with our core value. We had 2 core values, right? And one was help others first, and then the other one was be a hero, right? So be a hero meaning if there's a problem, step up and be the hero to solve it. And the other one was help others first, like go and solve other people's problems before your own. So the problem was actually it started
conflicting.
What?
Yeah, they were potentially conflicting, right?
Yes.
Because help others first is selfless, was be a hero is kind of selfish, right? Yes.
So then a lot of people just started becoming, I'll wait for the hero to help me, right? And then it's like
that's funny.
Yeah, we got into that core value conflict where it was like, all right, instead of actually helping, I'm just going to wait for someone to be heroic and bail me out. So then we thought we need a modification. We can't help others first. We have to like kind of help others help themselves or help inspire people to be independent. But then I felt like that would be a conflict about our original core value, which was we need to help others first because we're a hospitality company and helping and serving is core to hospitality. If you run into a situation like that, is it too late to backpedal and
No, it's not. That's what we did. We backpedaled. So there were 6 values, and there was so Airbnb has a famously strong culture, but there were cracks appearing in it around 2015, 16 because we doubled in size. Almost tripled in size in terms of revenue and users, but also the people we'd hired. And there were lots of people coming from other companies like Facebook and Google, whatnot. And some things started happening where people said, whoa, that's not us. How did that happen? How did we have the strong culture with these strong values, how did that get out the door? It was an advertising campaign in San Francisco that was up on bus shelters. That was very sort of abrasive.
Snarky.
I mean, it's a bit snarky. So, which isn't Airbnb at all. And so that prompted a massive internal sort of studying, like how the hell did that come out? What's happened to us? And it was like evidence. It was like a lightning rod. It was like evidence that people have been grumbling out for a few months. That look, see, the culture's changing. How did those people in the marketing department launch that campaign? Did they somehow slip through the core values and culture net? Because as you might have read from those. And I just did a new podcast actually that's posted yesterday about you use your purpose and your values to recruit, review, and reject everyone, including customers. And so Airbnb recruits people not just on their skills, but whether there's an overlap of personal values between them and you, the company. And people are rigorously trained to do that, and they have veto power. These culture interviewers. So you could be an amazing marketing person, but if you don't overlap in terms of values, you're not hired. So so there were questions about, well, maybe people had slipped through somehow. And I went out to try, and Joe asked me to go out and talk to people and see what was up immediately, the same day actually that this campaign went up. And I came back after a few days and said, yeah, there is something up. I need to know more. And so I went back out and talked to a lot more people around the world. And we found out that one of the main reasons why, first of all, what I found was that the culture wasn't fucked. It was actually very strong. But it was wobbly. It was in danger of being fucked unless we took action. And what was causing the culture to leak out, one of the big causes was that everyone loved the fact that there were core values, but they weren't working as well as they should. And so I decided to try and diagnose why. And that led to a whole investigation about, well, what are core values to begin with, and how do you know if they're right for you or not? How do you figure out what your core values are? So in the end, I did this very simple, it took a while for me to get to it, but this very simple exercise, the Venn diagram, where I asked people to write down in a circle their personal values that they use to make all the big decisions in their lives, and then the values that shared with Airbnb or not, and put it in the outside. And so we found actually, which was great, that there were lots of people, a ton of stuff in the middle. In fact, they often redrew the diagram to make almost completely overlapping circles, right? Which I guarantee you would not happen in most companies.
Yeah.
In a lot of companies, there's going to be two separate circles, right? Where your values are nothing like the companies, in which case you should just leave. Anyway, seriously, because life's too hard to work with people who don't share your values. So what I did in the end was to figure out what our core values actually were. Is I counted every single word that people had put down.
Yeah.
There were hundreds of these. So thousands of words, and I was able to cluster them and saw that they were basically three core values that people shared, which was be a host, put the mission first. It was mission first, caring, and daring was how we summed it up. Okay. Caring was being a host and like help other people first, like you have, and daring was always forge your own path, be entrepreneurial. Yep. Do it differently from everyone else. Do it the way that's right from you. So, mission first, caring, daring, and so I said that's what the values should be. Basically, these three values. That's what we'll share. And I did a separate exercise, but related with the founders. And with them, I wanted to make sure that the values were rooted in reality, because again, founders and leaders of companies can go spin off into the universe and come up with all kinds of wishful thinking and bullshit, basically, that has no basis in reality. So I got them to remember, the three founders, real events where they used their values to make the decision, like the Wimdu decision. And I asked them, so they wrote down all their events and they shared them, and then I asked them, now extract the meaning, the values you used. Okay. And so there was huge overlap, not just in terms of all the people with the company, but also the three founders agreed, and the values that they ended up with were the same values: mission first, caring, daring, as everyone else, which was great. Again, there's very few companies where you're going to find that to be true, where the founders and the employees have the same personal values. That's right. Where the three founders have the same personal values. That's why they're still together, probably. And so I said, but those are three values. We've got six. That means there are three that are not right. Which basically there are three which are wishful thinking. You wish they were true, but they weren't actually true. And the one was called simplify. Another one was called every frame matters. So which inherently were contradictory, like your ones, because simplify and every frame matters. Well, it doesn't add up. And there was another one that was kind of right.
Wow. That's good. That's good. You found the contradiction. Okay, yeah. Got it. Well, I never.
Yeah. So, and that was part of the problem, is that people felt there were too many. No one could remember the six values. Everyone always forgot one of them. That was different. Everyone remembered be a host, champion the mission, and maybe a serial entrepreneur. But no one could remember all six when I asked them. Right. So there should really just be two or three. It's great that you have two. Okay.
Well, we have more.
Because frankly, you need to get it down to three so you can remember them. And there need to be the three ones you really do share, right? That are real. That's what core values are. They're real. they're apparent every day when you make decisions together or
Got
talk to each other, the way you work with each other or with your customers. They're the ones that are there. It's not, there are aspirational values, and you can have those, but I think you shouldn't, because they're dangerous, because you probably will never achieve them. Like, people were very frustrated because because Simplify and Every Frame Matters, they were hit and miss. Some days we would meet them and some days we wouldn't. And it was kind of dispiriting because they weren't really our core values. None of us really shared them.
Got it. That's actually really
so that was the basis of reducing it down. It just wasn't a whim. It was sort of quantitative and qualitative. And I said, look, this is and I did a big presentation to all the employees, but which was like 3,500 at the time, saying, this is what you told me is your personal values. This is where they overlap with the company. So therefore, there's 3, maybe 4 areas. That's it. These 2 don't work anymore. Right. And and it was good because I had the total backing of the founders. Like Nate said, my personal favorite is Simplify. Right. And as it happens, Nate is really good at simplification. He's really gets things down to the nub very quickly, super smart. But he said, the truth is, not all of us are good at it. So we're just going to have to throw it away.
Wow.
And we did.
That must be tough. Okay, got it. I'm going to ask a question about community motivation, community engagement. And so when we bring, what we do actually, Douglas, here is we're sort of I think they call it Airbnb, a host management company. So post my time at Airbnb, came to Bali and we organized like hundreds of property owners together. And we started managing their properties on their behalf. And I think we might have had a purpose dilemma, which is we brought on all these people on the basis that we would actually create a investment for them, right? That this would be some sort of transactional relationship. But then what we've noticed during COVID is now we're trying to get them to prepare for post-COVID, right? But the enthusiasm in this is lacking because they don't see any transactional value in places that are empty right now. But we're saying, but it's going to be ready, and you got to be ready for it. And it's like a wishy-washy response back. Some people care and they're very passionate, but a lot of people are just like, And looking at that now, I'm wondering, should we have actually started with our purpose first? So our purpose is to inspire delight through hospitality innovations that positively transform people. So we're gonna create like new things in hospitality that are gonna make people really surprised and delighted and inspired. So I feel like if we had approached from that angle, a lot of our community went by, I just need somebody to manage my property. That sounds like something else, right? But now I kind of regret, let's say, not starting with that because it feels like we don't have an emotional connection. We have a transactional connection, but not an emotional. And then that, I believe, is the root cause of a lot of the things that we're trying to do as a community engagement, trying to get like our programs to be adopted, trying to get the community to use tools that we create for them, trying to have this enthusiastic response. And I'd like to kind of just float that out there and have your thoughts.
Right. So, I mean, if I understand what you're doing correctly, it's I really like this idea because you're basically, say, a hospitality company. You're bringing not just pure management of a property, but you're bringing a sense of hospitality and hosting to it too, where there's an emotional connection between you and the guests, right? Or you on behalf of the owners and the guests. Well, that's great because most property management companies don't do that. And so first of all, if it's based on the transaction, the trouble with the transaction is it's copyable, right? So another property management could crop up and you would have no difference between them and you because it's just about the transaction. It's something that's fungible, as they say in the gasoline business. Fungible means that everything's basically the same. Now, all gasoline is the same, it's just given different brand names. So, so it's fungible. It means that there's no difference. But there is a difference in what you're doing, which is you're actually providing the emotional side of hosting in addition, right, to the management. So yes, you should have led with that. It means you don't you don't necessarily not talk about the management and the transaction. Those are important. I mean, I found that first time I went out in 2012 and was talking to hosts and guests, the first reasons they would say why they use Airbnb were transactional, right? So, if they were a host, it was, I need to make money because I lost my job in the 2008 recession, blah, blah, blah. And if you're a guest, it's, I wanted to save money, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
But then when you dig a little deeper, they say, oh no, it's because I actually really enjoy meeting these people from all around the world who come and stay in my apartment, and my kids learning about different cultures, and it's amazing. So they may come initially for the transaction, but they stay for the emotional benefit, the intangible, subjective stuff with you. Otherwise, they'll just switch. So what's the difference between Airbnb and Booking? Booking is 100% the transaction. You look at their website, it screams transaction. It's deal, 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 right? Deal and guilt, like, oh my God, someone else is going for the same property, I need to run. Whereas you look at it, what you should see on Airbnb, but I still don't think you see enough of yet, is it's about hosting. It's about feeling like you belong. It's about, interaction with others and connections locally, all those kinds of things. And ultimately, I had the conversation with several conversations over the COVID crisis, actually, with Brian Chesky, about this very issue, because he has sort of made a bit of a similar mistake as you, I think, in that in going for growth, they had a lot of property management companies come onto the platform, especially while there was this head of homes there, I think. And head of homes, which I said to Brian, that's really the terrible name for that business, because Airbnb is not about listings, it's about hosting. It's about belonging anywhere. And so we're not a listings company like Booking. We're a belonging and hoping company, travel and belonging, basically. And so, and one of the other things, which is, I find it interesting, because Brian's told me they're now going to do this, is I've always said we need to measure the purpose as much as we measure the business and give them equal status. Okay? Because if, I don't know if it still is, but the main metric we had when I was there was a business metric was nights booked. We were measured on the number of nights booked, which cascaded down to all the teams, which affected conversion rates, the experience on the site and everything. But our purpose wasn't nights booked. Our purpose was creating a world where anyone can belong anywhere. So you had to measure that and give it equal status to business metrics, so that there's a tension between the two. And so, we tried, and then they gave up after I left, because it's hard to measure subjectivity stuff, especially if you're a tech company, you don't really know how. And so, no, you don't. I mean, because you're used to measuring tangible, objective things, right? Like conversion rates. Whereas I come from the world of branding, where all we did was measure intangible stuff, emotions, and self-image and stuff. So it's just two different industries, different experiences. Anyway, so you might have seen in the press that Brian has just over the past few days said, we're going back to our roots, to our basics. We're going back to hosting. He's fired the head of homes who came from Amazon. He's appointed this great woman who came from Disney, all about emotion. And she was running experiences, and now she's head of hosting. Because I said to Brian, it shouldn't be head of homes, it should be head of hosts or head of hosting. And so he's done it, which is great. And the emphasis is on host it good. So the reason I'm telling you this story is, even when you're a massive company like Airbnb, you can still fuck it up. You can still get distracted by the transactions, by the business management. And you've got to keep yourself on track by somehow making sure that the purpose is front and center. And if you're a metrics-driven company, then you need to somehow create a metric for that, because that needs equal measurement, and assess yourself according to it. So now, apparently, he said he's found this guy who used to be the guy who runs the CDC for Obama when Obama was president, who's written a book called Together, I think it's called, Together or Connections. And he's going to try and figure out how to measure belong anywhere, which will be great.
I would love to know what that metric is. That would be...
Yeah, me too. Me too. I haven't written the last article yet in that series on Medium, because Airbnb hasn't done it yet, which is measure your mission and or my purpose and give it equal status, but they're in the process of. So hopefully when that's up and running, that'll all work out. So you're a property management company that isn't just about transactions, you're about the emotional side of the experience too, which is great. But I recommend that that you measure it somehow and you make it equally accountable to business metrics. So, and the other thing, by the way, is you need to choose your owners and find the ones who match your mission, your purpose. So if you just have people motivated by the transaction, you start phasing them out and let someone else have them. You need to develop an experience and then a reputation that's around something else that isn't just the transaction.
Understood.
It needs to be about your mission.
I get that feeling a lot because I'm watching Netflix and watching all these Michelin star restaurants, and they talk about, like, the way I see it, we're kind of curators of experiences. So our mission is to sort of anchor the point of a guest experience around this accommodation, right? But you know what they do while they have that is our responsibility. And I've noticed that as in all these like Netflix food porn type things, it's always about the ingredients, right? It's always about like the provenance of the ingredients and where it comes from. But yet I've found that we have compromised a bit in order to get business growth metrics. We take everybody on, right? We're the Amazon of whatever. We're just like, oh, there's okay, potential revenue. And I've wondered about if purpose by itself will attract other owners, right? Like, let's say, for example, okay, this is the mission, right? So we inspire, delight, positively hospitality mission that positively transforms owners. So does that purpose inspire other owners to want to join us versus I want a good ROI on my property? I've been struggling with it.
You can. I'm sure there's going to be hosts, obviously, who are immediately attracted to that. But there's other hosts who may say, like I said about the host I talked to in 2012, who may think that they want to do it just for the money, but actually they learn over time that there's even greater rewards on top of the money. So you might be able to convert hosts into solo transaction into other things and appeal to their humanity, maybe you can even say you're likely to get more rewarding guests who will look after your place more because they know us, the hosts, and so many people I've talked to, literally thousands and thousands of Airbnb hosts and guests, and Airbnb guests told me they behave much better in an Airbnb home than they ever do in a hotel, right? In a hotel, there is no personal connection whatsoever. Yeah. And unless it's a small, intimate boutique family-run hotel. Otherwise, they just throw the towels on the floor. They won't tidy up or whatever. Right. Whereas Airbnb guests tend to treat it like it's their own home, even better than their own home, actually. They're more tidy in an Airbnb, and they give it more care because they can see that it's someone real and personal. The other thing is try and have homes, not listings, meaning that there's the personality of the host is somewhat there in some way. Because a lot of guests, they kind of like try and understand the story of the host from their possessions and photographs and all those books they bought and stuff like that. They like, it just feels there's more of a human connection if they're staying in a place that isn't, just decked out in IKEA, but is more personalized. And you might want to encourage your owners to think of it that way.
Definitely. Okay, Douglas, thank you so much for sharing your time.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
And
no, you're welcome. Good luck. I'm glad to hear that you exist. Really. So.
The funny thing is, last time I met you, we bumped into each other at a train station, actually, in Paris.
Right. That's right.
That's right. Yeah, you tapped me on the shoulder. You were like, "Jing." I was like, "Oh my God, Douglas!" we were
right.
in Paris.
was that? Oh wow, that's weird.
Yeah.
So anyway, no, but I'm glad you exist because not all property managers are the same, right? So you're property managers with soul.
Oh yeah.
And
thank you.
Yeah. If I speak to Brian again, I'll try and remember to mention you guys because. He'll be glad to hear. So what I was saying to him is that there probably are property managers who really do deliver a feeling of belonging anywhere, right? It's just we don't know. And so that's why you need these two metrics, because there's going to be property managers like you guys who do deliver a sense of belonging anywhere, and you stay on the platform. And the ones that don't deliver belonging anywhere should leave. So it's not that, you know, not all hosts are the same, not all property managers are the same, not all hotels are the same. There are differences.
That was
And the metric will help describe it. What's that?
Airbnb had that prejudice against property managers for a very long time. I came from like the world of real estate. I saw that most property managers are landlords, right? They expect to collect rent.
Yeah.
But I remember having that background.
No, I remember.
It's like a leper. It's like,
yeah, no. It's because most of them are transactional. That's why they really are. Most are transactional. I mean, I remember, oh God, staying in Singapore once for an Airbnb meeting. You'd be traveling for like 20 hours from San Francisco, and then this fucking property manager was there, and I said, he showed me around the place, and I said, yeah, but there's no air conditioning. This is Singapore. It says there is air conditioning. It's broken. He didn't give a shit. So in the end, I cancelled it and went to one that did, with a really great host.
Well, you got to find the good ones out there. But it'd be great if you could remind. Brian remembers me. I think I hosted him when he came to Bali in 2013. I think.
Oh, really?
Brian's family around. Yeah, Brian's family around. Make sure that they had an enjoyable experience. But yeah,
I remember him when he was there.
Yeah, his dad.
That's when I think I wrote him the email that was the culture's fucked.
Anyway. My God. Maybe that's why he was so distracted. I noticed that he was super distracted, and he was like all on his MacBook Air the whole time. He showed me the Bélo. He showed me the Bélo, actually. He said,
okay.
What do you think of this, Jing? And I was like, I thought it looked, I really like the old one. I like the old scripted Airbnb. And I had to be diplomatic, so I said, I think, and the first thing I thought was genitalia.
Boobs.
It's like boobs and
yes.
everything.
Boobs and bums. Yeah. Whatever. Yeah. It is most people's first thought, let's face it.
And then I said, you're going to probably get a very strong reaction if you show everybody this. And he's like, yeah, isn't it great? And then I was like, yeah. And then he told me about the idea of brand and about the encapsulation of an idea in the brand. And it was pretty interesting.
Yes.
So I got a front row seat on that one. But okay, thank you very much, Douglas, for coming in.
Right, nice meeting you, Jing.
Yep. Yeah, nice meeting you too. And we'll make an appreciation post for you.
Let me know what happens.
Oh, we'll do. Okay, cheers, Douglas. Okay. Whoa, interesting. Okay. Hopefully that was a different perspective. And